build in a way that you can sustain yourself and also take care of those around you.
Shadeh Smith has spent her life building culture from behind the scenes. She started as an intern at Atlantic Records in the UK at 16.
I was like a bit of a bulldog earlier on in my career.
Creating under pressure, under constraint, and often with no easy path forward.
My job looked really fun. It looked like I was just always having a good time, and I was like, I almost died today.
She's worked across worlds with artists like Kehlani, Burna Boy, Lizzo, Ed Sheeran, Sean Paul, and Gwen Stefani, to name a few.
I worked with a rapper for a long time, NBA YoungBoy. He had a big basketball court, so I went to the record label and I was like, look, we'll turn the basketball court into a studio, we'll build sets. And yeah, we kind of made miracles happen, honestly.
Yeah. Now, through Everyday Dreamer, and she made it, she's building something bigger than output.
What I love is making worlds come alive, but I want a bit of ownership here.
And a pipeline for underrepresented filmmakers to find their voice.
I was getting a lot, DMs, emails, That was the moment for me that I was like, whoa, let's get this information out there. Let's make this process easier in a very safe space.
This is Shadeh Smith. This is The Messy Middle.
Perfect.
What do you think is going to come out of this interview?
How many ways in which I can make an awkward joke? Probably.
Okay. That's good. I like it.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some jokes.
Mm-hmm. All right.
A little awkward behavior. Maybe a gem or two.
I love it. Okay. So we're all recording. Let me start off by saying thank you for making the time to being here. There's only a few people that we've done interviews with. It's a team community effort where I actually never met the person until I did the interview.
Ooh.
So you're the second person, I believe, that it lives in that world. So I'm excited because even with the people that I know, I'm learning so much about them. And obviously everything that we discussed outside of the conversation we already had, which was great, and really kind of like clearly showed like, okay, I want to do an interview with her. I want to sit down with Shadeh. So Shadeh Smith, thank you for making time on The Messy Middle. You are a creative, a filmmaker. And when you say the word creative, we'll dive into what that means. Creative director, a filmmaker. You've been a music commissioner. You've been involved in production at a really high level. You've also been you're also the founder of Everyday Dreamer and the nonprofit She Made It. And what's been really interesting learning a bit about you is, your culture and your voice is very strong in the work, I feel, that I see. And that is a tough thing for creatives, I think, to kind of really, I don't say get right because it's not a right or wrong thing, but make it feel a little more definitive.
Right.
So we're going to dive through a lot of this stuff about philosophy of life and all of these elements. So I'm excited to talk to you about culture and building brands and experiential and all these things that you've been across. So thank you for making the time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You have some really unique areas that I'm pumped to talk about when it comes to filmmaking. I think your work to build community around the space and your music industry experience and all of that stuff. But before we dive into those, I want to know, what are you building in this part of your life right now?
Oh, going easy.
Yeah.
What am I building in this part of my life? I think everything I'm doing at the moment is really, the engine is purpose. I'm really grateful for the life I have. I'm really grateful for everything I've built around me. And I think everything I do now, I really want to be focused in an area, whether that's filmmaking or the nonprofit or creative direction. I feel like I'm trying to streamline kind of where I'm going with things and just make everything a bit more intentional. I'm trying to build in a way that lets my life breathe a little bit too. I spent a really long time working at a very, very intense rate, which it built me for sure. You know, it taught me a lot about my craft early on. But it's also really hard to work at that rate consistently. And I'm a workhorse. Like, I was always that way. My mum is that way. Like, I love to work. And if I don't put some safeguards on myself, that is all I'll do. And in the last kind of 5 years of my life, I think I've been on a bit of a quest to, you know, not to get too spiritual, too deep, too fast.
We're going to get there.
But I've been on a quest to try and like figure out what this is all about. And I think something that's come from that is, you know, build in a way that you can sustain yourself and also take care of those around you. But it starts with being able to sustain yourself and look after yourself. And I didn't do that for a really long time. I was always in service of others. I was always, you know, working 7 days a week and insane hours on an airplane, like sometimes twice a week, being, you know, flying. And, you know, 20s, that's like a dream. Like, and it's great. And I honestly have had such wonderful experiences, but then you get a little bit older and it's not always sustainable. And I think you start to suffer. And that's not to say I want to slow down in terms of the things I'm doing, because I'm a founder, I'm a filmmaker, I'm all these things. So it would be remiss of me to be like, oh, I'm really just chilling. It's not the case, but building in a way that I can like be good myself.
I think that's a powerful thing to say as a creative and as an entrepreneur, because we're told so much that, you know, grind 24/7. And the grind, you become, you know, ground down, you know, to a place. So I think that level of sustainability is a really important thing. And certainly a part of the conversation that we're going to have today, because I think you shared some things with me that, you know, about your journey and from, you know, the work that you did in the radio business to in the music business, to where you are now. There is that level of, you need to find spirituality, and you need to find, it's not just a level of identity, but that level of health. Because if you aren't healthy, none of this really works. But before we go into that, I wanted to pick up on my bad intro that I did. And there is a reason why I want to do it. And this will be part of the interview. I just felt like I wanted to dive into a couple of things. So, you know, you've been in the business, you've been in the industry for over 15 plus years. You've worked with Kehlani, Burna Boy. You've worked with Ed Sheeran. You've worked with IShowSpeed and Kai Cenat. And, you know, you're doing this cross convergence of this really unique parallel that you have with me. Because when we first, I know I just tapped myself. I know, I was looking at me. But when we talked, you were like, "Elle, it's like we're twins." And you built like you know, with Everydydrmr, it's like ZR, you know, and I was in music and I got into production and I got into filmmaking, and now we're working with streamers and it's like, it's a very cool thing to hear from your vantage point, especially being, you know, a woman in this business. So I wanted to just add that. And we don't need to edit that, Egan. You know, he's our lead editor for this. But I just wanted to make sure. And cover that, because I think it's important. And before we get into kind of like the beginnings, let's talk a little bit more about the intent behind Everydydrmr. And, you know, although you know, your Iranian background, you know, you were born and raised in the UK, but I want to know about Everydydrmr and how that you're seeing it inform your movement today.
Great question. So I started my studio when I had left the record label, and honestly, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I didn't necessarily have a plan. And whether that's good or bad or whatever, it was what it was. You know, I knew that I wanted to keep working in the creative space. I had clients at the time, and I felt like it was time for me to enter a different chapter where I could kind of call my own shots and, you know, decide where I wanted to work and what I wanted to put effort into. Because, you know, the other thing is, when you're a creative working in a corporate space, it's very rare that you can choose where you work or what you work on. And I think that's important, because sometimes we can pigeonhole ourselves into thinking we can just do one thing. So when you're forced to kind of take on projects that you may not have chosen yourself, I think it's good. It flexes that muscle of like, you know, I have to be able to be versatile and figure it out. But I think when you're doing it for a long time, it's important to me anyway that, you know, I have a stake in what I'm working on or an interest in it that really fuels me, because when I work, I really work.
Yeah.
And I'm putting 110% in. So, you know, it's really hard to do that if you don't align with something, you don't understand it, it's not quite for you. And then, you know, maybe the work suffers because of it. Yeah. And like I always used to even tell artists I would work with, and I actually tell everyone, is like, you have to be really mindful, because whether you're, you know, it's a product or you're an artist or, you know, whatever the thing is that is being worked around or worked for, the people that are in your team and the people that are building you, they're a large part of why you get to where you get to. Yeah. You know, like the team is crucial. No one does any of this by themselves.
Right.
No one. In whichever area we're talking about, there's always multiple people, and you have to really treat those people in a way that, you know, allows them to do their best for you.
Right.
But the same goes for the content too, you know, like not saying that I would ever not put 110% in.
Yeah.
And for young people that I'm talking to or mentoring, you know, I say the same, which is like, if you're going to do it, even if it's maybe not for you, just you have to go in at that 110%. As you get older and you progress through your career, I think you maybe get the luxury a little bit of being like, that one's not for me.
Right.
Because if I'm going to work the way I work, and if I'm going to put this in, then I want to really be able to come out of it and be like, ta-da.
Right.
And I'm honestly, there's been some things that I've worked on that even now I'm kind of learning, like, I probably won't talk about that, or I probably can't, you know, put that on my reel or whatever. And it's fine, because I'm learning every day now.
Of course, we all are.
However, in recent times, I've been made really aware of like, into the intentionality, and that's to my point earlier, you know, and it's what I'm doing with Everyday Dreamer it's important, because that's my, you know, what we work on that's my resume when you're a creative, you know, the projects you work on, taste level, that starts to then, you know, other people look at that and that's what they hire you on. Sure. So when you get into a more senior position, it's really important. And, you know, with Everyday Dreamer, that's not to say every single thing we've worked on is like, this lights up my life. And there's been some times where I've been asked to do a project and I've really thought twice about it, because, you know, whatever it might be, like maybe our morals don't quite align.
Does it serve a purpose? You know,
like
any of those things.
And there's usually like a couple of like checks and balances, which is like, is this a big paid job? Because let's be honest, like no one is going to be like, oh, this is a $250,000, $1 million job, and like I'm just not quite aligned with it. Like people want to make money.
You're also a founder of the company, so you have, you know, mouths to feed to some extent,
bills to pay,
those things. So it's a part of the balance that you're playing.
There's a balance, and I think, you know, it's got to be. It has to financially make sense. It has to be something that is really heart-led that I want to talk to. You know what I mean? Or it has to be something that I think might lead me somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure,
things have to kind of like align in one of those. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense to put all of that into it. So I guess with Everyday Dreamer, I'm learning something new every day.
For sure.
Every day. Yeah. Excuse the pun.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just trying to pay attention to what we do and how we do it as well, and how I work with people. You know, I was like a bit of a bulldog earlier on in my career. I don't think anyone would have described me as like, oh, she's so nice. And
she was like,
she's so
lovely
soft-spoken and sweet. No one would ever describe me as that. Yeah. And there's a few reasons for that. One was which I was pretty scared and unsure what I was doing for a lot of my earlier career. And so I felt like I had to emulate, you know, like the men that I was around. And I only really ever worked for men and tough guys too, you know, like men that, you know, you're like.
They went hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would be a little scared every day, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't have any female, you know, role models or earlier on in my career or women in business that I was really like working with at the time. And so I kind of became this hardened...
This reflection of the people that you're essentially like the mini community that you had around you.
Yeah, because that's the only way I knew how to do business. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not from the, you know, we spoke about it, but like I have a politics degree. I didn't grow up in like music, entertainment. Like for me, I thought I had to be like, I know it all and I'm tough and like no one can mess with me. And so now I think from a lot of reflection and a lot of kind of like looking at how I did things, where things went wrong, where I really like, can I swear?
Yeah, of course.
Where I really fucked myself.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really trying to not do that with my company. And I'm really trying to work with others in the way that I really always wanted to, but I didn't feel like I wasn't confident enough. I didn't really feel like I had the business acumen to be soft and, you know, to be gracious and to be spiritually inclined and to ask like whoever I'm working with on the day that we're doing a job, like, how are you feeling? You know, I just didn't think that was something that could be done. So I think with Everyday Dreamer, I'm trying to do things, whether or not I get it right every time is another question, but
you're working through and you're aware of it. I think there's a couple of things from that I want to kind of touch on that we will touch on a little bit later, but I think the level of awareness is really important. I think accepting the faults is very important.
Very hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Sobering experience, but very important.
Yeah, and I think this, you know, when you're put in a position where you're jumping from company and industry and you're learning and you're feeling the pressure and you're trying to like, hey guys, you see me over here, you're trying to create your voice. Like you're not going to react in a rational way. You're doing it in a way that's like, you're just trying to be to some extent performative, right? And one of the things that I really like to do in these interviews is to make sure that people can take from these lessons or these stories and try to implement it into their lives, right? Because whether it's an incredibly successful person who's, you know, $1 billion company, whatever it is, to entrepreneurs who've had great success and are able to build community around their people, I think the most important thing for me is to make sure that the people that we're having conversations with are able to share real experiences. And that's why I wanted to move to something first. Before the music business, you spent some time you went to Brazil. And then you ended up getting into politics. You mentioned it briefly. I'm curious about one, that experience, the international, that cultural experience, coming from the UK, doing Brazil, being Iranian, and then getting into politics and trying to best understand how that brought you to music and production.
Politics as in my career, my degree.
You went to school.
Do it at school,
Yeah, you went for politics.
Ooh, well, you know, so I ask myself that question.
Yeah, no, which is
often.
It's great.
And I think, I did. I moved to Brazil when I was 18. I wanted to go and teach. I always wanted to work in the charity sector. You know, I wanted to be a peacekeeper for the UN. That was my dream. I was always really kind of politically motivated as a child, like much to my mom and dad's
chagrin,
frustration. Like I got really fascinated or really, you know, upset by, you know, the issues in China with baby girls and stuff like that.
Like international policy.
Yeah, and just like things that I didn't understand. And I would, every few weeks, I would like be in school with a petition, or I would be like doing an assembly to the point where like my parents had to like speak to the teachers because I was really riling up the kids. I was like showing pictures of kids that had been like thrown away, and like I was young, you know, but I just felt like, why were some people happy and living such a fortunate life and other people weren't. Like, it just didn't compute in my brain. So I always thought that's the way I was going to go. And that's when I went to Brazil, I went to teach. I was teaching English and art. And then actually, whilst I was there, you know, there's a lot of politics with NGOs and the charities, you know, sector. And I think I kind of realized that I maybe was a bit naive in what I thought I was going to be able to do and how I was going to be able to change the world.
Right.
And not that that was not something I wanted to do, but it just planted in my head like, okay, there's more to this, you know, than just me being like, this is bad, this is wrong, somebody change it, you know. There's nuance here that I was just not aware of. But Brazil changed my life. Brazil was where I spent, in my opinion, like my formative years. You know, 18 to 23 is a lot changes in that time. Definitely. I found a family there. I found a community that I love, and my godson is now there. Wow. Like, you know, I have a wonderful network. And actually, Brazil, ironically, has ended up being my kind of big filmmaking project, because I'm working on my first documentary right now, and it's set in Brazil with the kids that I used to teach. So now they're in their 20s, but when I was their teacher, they were like 4 and 5 years old.
Wow, wow.
Little did I know, you know, at the time, I had no idea where my life was going to go. I was just like winging it, you know, figuring it out. And that's how life works, you know, and in some ways, honestly, I wouldn't have left Brazil if my mom hadn't forced me to go home, because I had gotten a really kind of a sought after place at a really good university, University of Sussex. Shout out Sussex.
Shout out Sussex. Yeah.
In their politics department. And it's not easy to do that. And so in the UK, you can defer your place, because we like to travel, you know, in Europe. We're always told, like, go and travel, see the world. So that's what I was doing when I went to Brazil. And I just kept deferring my place until there was no more deferrals. And my mom was like, if you don't come home and you don't mess with a Persian woman, you know, like, no. It got to the point where, like, every year she was annoyed, but I could see that it was like still okay.
Yeah, she was going to go to Brazil and pull you out.
It got to the point where she was like, enough, you know? And I remember the phone call, and I could hear it in her voice. And like Middle Eastern women, you know, you get to a point and then it's enough. And so that's why I left and came home and went, you know, and did my degree. But I kind of for a long time didn't realize all these things were connected, and they really are, because politics, filmmaking, people, community, like they all have a through thread. What I learned at university, you know, I personally built great community there. You know, like I have friends that I'm still friends with. I got to live a very important part of my life, but I also got to learn about the things I wanted to learn about and understand how they influence real life decisions, and, you know, how they, now I'm looking back, how they influence how I carry myself, how I can understand people. And I think if there's something I'm proud of things, but like I'm proud of how I can relate to other people. That's something that, you know, is important to me. And I think, you know, entering the politics space at university, it helped, because you learn about so much and so many different people and so many walks of life, and how our world is interconnected, and how important it is to understand those connection points. And that really translates to your relationships with humans, you know, understanding how connected we are, even when we can't really see the connection initially. That's important, you know, and it affects business, and it affects your relationships, and it affects so much.
Your movement, everything.
How you carry yourself, how you think, how you feel about yourself, you know, I think.
And that's, and not to cut you, I was just going to say, like, you know, it's a very important point to make, especially for you, and kind of like working to understand that evolution of part of your life, because you went from politics and you ended up in music business.
The most political business in the world. Very intriguing space. There are, when you're in the music business, you actually know that there is quite a bit of parallels, right? How did that happen? And I'm curious,
because we won't get too granular about the music business side of things. I think being a music commissioner, being in the production world and helping oversee music videos and all these campaigns, I think is awesome. And I want you to touch on some of those. But I'm curious, you already said like how it taught you, but how did that transition happen and why did it happen, I guess?
It was really, well, I mean, a couple of things. My dad brought me up with music as a real central point in my house. My dad had hundreds of records, you know, like music was a big part of my family, and I was always obsessed with music. Like music got me through so many parts of my life, you know, through some really dark bit, just the whole thing.
Yeah, of course.
And when I was younger, we used to drive past a record label in Kensington, and it was Atlantic Records. And I used to say to my mom, like, I'm going to work there one day. You know, it was a pipe dream, whatever, at that moment. But there was always something in me that was like, I'm going to get to music. I'm going to get to music. And it actually began earlier on because in my true mum fashion, she knew I wanted to be in music. And they were on holiday. My mum and dad went to Egypt, and they met a lady by the pool who happened to work for Warner Records. And my mum made a beeline for her. My daughter, da-da-da, she wants, you know, very classic.
It's good.
And so I
should tell you about how my mom tries to explain to people what
you do.
Yeah,
I've stopped. Just like, you know what? It's a mixture of everything she said.
Yeah.
But she basically like forced me upon this poor woman at the pool and said like, she really wants to, you know, is there anything you can do? And my dad too. My dad's in the background like, yeah, she's great, and you know. And they gave me this woman's number and her email, and I badgered her for so long, Rudo. Badgered her. Is there anything? You know, and she was like, no. And I was really young. I think I was like 16 at the time. Is there anything? And
this is like pre-Brazil.
This is pre,
Wow,
sorry. This is like before.
Yeah.
And there's a reason I made that connection. But so I eventually like forced my way into a really small internship. And it was like someone dropped out and I had to take a week off school. And I was like, Mom, I got to do it. And she was like, okay. So I went and did an internship at Rhino, which was like the catalog. I mean, it was boring. It was like Elvis Presley, 192. You know, I was just inputting, but I was so excited to be at a record label. I couldn't believe it. At that age too.
Yeah.
So fast forward, when I was leaving university, and I left university later than others. I suffered really badly with depression in my last year of university. So I graduated not with my peers, not with my class. And I think that kind of had a bit of an impact because I didn't launch myself into the job world in the same way. You know, I was a little nervous because I had not been in a good place for a while. And so when I came out, I was like, it was jail. when I graduated and, you know, finished and went home, I was a little sensitive from life and, you know, everything I had kind of like been through. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't know that politics is for me right now. I'm not sure where I would begin and I need a job. So, and I want to work. I've always had a job.
Yeah.
I started babysitting when I was 12, which I don't know why anyone would leave their child with a 12-year-old now, but I did it like...
different times, yeah.
I mean, I was babysitting like 4 nights a week and getting paid for it, but crazy. And then I was a hairdressing assistant and a casting assistant. Like I've always worked. And so when I came out and I was like, I'm not about to be here and not have a job.
Yeah.
And I was with a friend of mine who I went to school with, and she was an artist at the time, Eliza Doolittle. And we were like having lunch or something. And she was like, oh, I'm looking for a new assistant. And just in passing, she was just telling me. And I was like, I'll do it. She was like, Shadeh, you don't want to be my assistant. Like, you're going to have to get my laundry. I was like, yeah? So? Like, you got a car?
Yeah.
Can I drive?
Care. You didn't care.
Yeah, I didn't care. I was like, it's a job is a job.
Yeah.
And I loved her as an artist too. I thought she was doing really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So she gave me the job. And I was kind of like, you know, shoulder to shoulder with music industry people because I had to deal with her management. And and it was a great experience, like learning the music industry from that kind of angle. But also like I was just really like helping my friend.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a massive deal. And then I have another friend who I grew up with who's also a musician. And she was like, will you come and help me? I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. So I went, you know, and I just helped my friends basically that were in the industry, and they were
community
singers.
kind of like helped nurture your space into the space.
And it didn't really feel like, it didn't feel crazy to me, you know? And I did many different things in that. I mean, I was doing makeup, I was driving, I was just doing...
You really made your way through
I was doing whatever. And it was fun, you know, like, it was fun. I was with my friends, they were singers, like, this is great. And so then I was kind of adjacent to the music industry a little bit. And lo and behold, I got a notification about an assistant role at Warner Music. And I was like, because Rhino was part of Warner. Like, so I messaged good old Rudo, who had given me my internship. And I was like, I wanna like go for this assistant position. Can you like put a word in? And so I think she did. And I got a temp role as an A&R assistant at Warner Brothers. And it was great. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm working at a record label. Like, it's amazing.
So from a driver and assistant to makeup to picking up laundry and all these kinds of things. To making your way through to a music commissioner, director, like, those things happen all within a pretty tight window of one another.
I joined Warner Brothers as an A&R assistant, and then they reassigned me to be assistant to the MD of a smaller sub-label called Asylum Records. And I was pretty go with the flow at that time. You know, I was just happy to be in the room. And so they were like, oh, we want you to go and like look after the managing director of this small record label. Okay. Like, I'm not really sure what a PA is, but I'm pretty sure I can do it. So they moved me over to Asylum. And at the time, it was a really tiny team. They had just signed Ed Sheeran, Rudimental, Mahalia, and Marie came later. It was a vibe.
And some of those artists made some big records.
And it, you know, it just happened. And then I moved quite quickly. That managing director then became the president of Atlantic Records, and he brought me with him. And that was all within the space of probably 5 years, maybe. And then once I was at Atlantic, I found my big girl voice, and I was like, I don't want to be a PA anymore. And he was like, okay, well, what do you want to do then? And I wanted to do something creative, so they made me a junior commissioner at the time, and just so happened I was good at it. And from then, I just kept going.
And what did a commissioner do at the time?
So, I mean, it's still the same job, to be honest. It's like, it's not a very big, there's not lots of commissioners. You tend to like stay in the role when you're in it. But essentially, you know, we're responsible, depending on exactly, you know, the breadth of your job. It can be music videos, it can be artwork, anything visual, basically. You're kind of in charge of bringing to the table creative ideas, overseeing the process, managing budgets. There is a creative element to it. I would say it's 50% creative, 50% administrative, and production heavy. And, you know, sometimes you're really close to artists and you're like on call all the time. Sometimes it's more like, this is the video, here's the director, like, let's just get on with it. But it's a very, very hands-on role. It requires a lot of time and attention, and you have to really be good with people. And that's why commissioners tend to remain commissioners, because they develop really strong relationships with artists that are hard to replicate. And you can't just plug and place new people in those roles, because most artists don't love the music video process. Like,
it looks nice when you watch a video, but you don't understand.
The whole thing is grueling, you know, and it takes a lot, and you know, they're long days, and you're in front of a camera, so then you're worried about how you look and how you come. It's a lot, you know, and so when you develop those relationships, there's an element of kind of therapy too, because you're with people a lot, you travel with them, and so the politics really comes into play.
Definitely.
At that point.
And I think And I think you were in this place that's interesting. You got your legs in the space. You built your way through kind of this level of the industry, and it got a bit challenging for you, right? I think relationships, identity, people, men, that kind of like level of the music business. You mentioned, I guess, like burnt you out to some extent.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's more that I wasn't prepared for some of the decisions and situations that I was going to be in, or
and nobody's like teaching you these things that are going to happen anyway.
Exactly. And I also don't think I had a big network of women at the time that I could ask for help from or advice. That's not to say I don't have great friends. Of course. I'm so grateful for my female network. Like those, my relationships that have literally kept me alive.
Yeah.
But in a business sense at the time, I didn't feel, and maybe it's not because I didn't have the people, but I felt a bit embarrassed not knowing the answers to some things, or not really knowing who to turn to, or if I was going to sound like incompetent if I, needed help with something. So I think it was more that I wasn't equipped to handle some of the things that came up. And so they really, they shook my identity a little bit.
Yeah. As, I think for many people that I've been around, whether, it's youth that we've mentored or family members or even successful folks, I think there isn't a lot of the written blueprint for any of this stuff. Like a music video or a production, you can go into it with a plan, but you always have to adjust.
Always.
And for business, especially in the music business, especially dealing with artists and ego and all this stuff, it's like there is not a single person that's going to walk you through this thing.
No.
And it's part of building the character and preparing you for your moves.
And it's moving all the time, like the target is always kind of moving. And I think it's particularly hard in industries where, so some of the artists I worked with, they're hardcore artists, and I had to be a certain way in situations to protect myself and to keep everything running. And then I think having to then go back into like a corporate environment when, like trying to, be peacemaker and politically correct and all these things, like it is a tricky thing to balance, because like I'm out in the field alone, like in some precarious situations because of who I was working with, and I'm having to be like a real tough cookie. And then like I have to go back, and I don't really understand how to kind of like navigate executive conversations, and it's almost like there's two versions of yourself and there's no point in which they meet. You just kind of have to like code switch really quickly in order to be accepted and be okay. And a lot of people don't understand that if you are in one role, when you have to switch back and forth, like in the music industry in that way. And I think people like kind of didn't like me because of it, because my job looked really fun. It looked like I was just always having a good time. And I was like, I almost died today. It's not fun.
Nobody wants to die. But one of the things that stood out to me is this point that you're code switching, you're playing both sides. It gets worse and worse, more challenging, more pressure as you get more responsibility, right? So I think there's a breaking point that you felt that removed you from that space. And I'm curious where that and how that drew you to say, you know what, I need to make something for myself. Because that breaking point, I'm sure, came with time, angst, maybe some level of depression, maybe some level of like, kind of like being punched in the face almost kind of thing. I was fortunate when I transitioned out of the music and radio side of things. Primarily radio, was like I was a production director, creative director at the station. I had some mentors, had my boss who was like championing my transition. And he was just like, when you're ready,
do it.
Let me know, right? And when I made that decision, it was like The only real thing that I had to face was you got no savings or anything and you're going to go and do this and you're telling them you're going to go. That means you're leaving. So you're ready to go, you know, and it was like that kind of thing. So it was like just no safety net kind of thing. So, but for what you were dealing with was quite, you know, I think more nuanced, right? More challenging.
Yeah. And I think even to this day, it's something I struggle with, you know, when your identity is so wrapped up in something and then it's gone, you know, it really leaves you this void of like trying to figure out like what you're supposed to do next. And I think, you know, I would never change my trajectory and like how I got to this point and, you know, the people I worked with and where I worked with and where I worked. I think there were a lot of things that happened that were kind of like a bit of a pressure cooker on me, like again and again and again, and feeling like really alone a lot of the time. I think at some point I was just like...
Did you quit? Or did you... Was it kind of...
No,
okay.
I didn't. Okay. I transitioned to be a consultant.
Okay.
But there were, you know, reasons around it. And I think that time was really hard because I loved my job. Right. Like, and I'd been working at the same record label for, at the time, like...
And who are some of the artists you were working with?
You
said like Ed Sheeran you were working with.
In the UK, under my old boss,
And then when you went to Atlantic.
Atlantic in the US, I did Burna Boy, Lizzo, Kehlani, NBA YoungBoy, Kevin Gates. Right. A bunch of, you know, a bunch of different people. Yeah. And those people, some of them were my friends too, you know, and the management teams were my friends. And I think when I suddenly wasn't Shadeh from Atlantic, which I had been quite literally my entire life, from 23 years old, I was then like, who am I? And also the reality, not to be like super cliche and trope about it, but you know, your value to people sometimes is very heavily aligned with where you work. And when you don't work in that place anymore, you start to realize that like, oh, maybe everyone doesn't love you. Right. This is a weird feeling. Yeah. And for someone that is a massive people pleaser, which I am, like I hate the thought that someone doesn't like me or is unhappy or, you know, I just don't like that thought. I never have. I'm a huge people pleaser. That was a very sobering experience to then not, you know, have a record label email and realize that like, I can't get hold of some people. This is weird. What's going on? Right. And you know, people say that and it's never going to be me, like whatever. And it does create a void that you then have to
also
figure
like
out.
Alienated. You're
alienated and it's like, you're then on the outside of the club a little bit, you know, and did
you confront any of those people or talk to them? I'm just curious. You don't have to say it. No. But I'm just curious.
No, I think it was such an emotional experience for me to leave the record label in that way, because it was really my home, that I think I just like let it, I just had to let it live for a bit. And also the other thing as well is record labels in the US and record labels in the UK are very different. Yeah. And my experience in the UK was like, my formative experience was very different to what it was here in the States. And so I think, there was a lot of things happening at that point, but to your question, you know, it leaves a bit of a void that then you have to really get real with yourself and honest and figure out like, okay, what am I doing here? And I think that point for me was after, you know, the whatever and the yay and I'm staying, am I going, like all of the like question marks. For me, I was like, okay, if I'm going to work the way I work, which I always will, like, I want a bit of ownership here. Like, you know, I want to, and I was working at the record, like insane. Like there were some times I was, you know, on a job and I was sleeping in like a Motel 6 and having to go every day to an artist. I was sleeping 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe a night. And everyone puts, you know, there's a lot of pressure because when you're out in the field, it's on you.
Yeah.
So why didn't you come back with the video? Why didn't you come back with the artwork? Why,
Right.
you know, and a lot of time the artists, as a commissioner, you know, back then, like, they only want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, because you kind of don't feel like the record label, even though you are.
You're kind of this in between.
You're like, you're like a floating head, you know, that isn't the corporate.
Right.
And that's how I always, I prided myself in that, you know, like I worked for the record label, but I worked for my artists as much as anything. And their best interest was always very important to me, probably more so than the label maybe would have wanted. But those relationships I really valued.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to make sure that they were, you know, done right. So I guess.
I was going to say, that is an important quality, and I don't want to like stray too far on this side of it. You know, we work with a lot of talent for a long time, and you only get that close trust by making sure that they understand, like, I'm looking out for you before I look out for them.
Yeah.
Because if I look out for you and you're good, you're going to give them what they want. It's not going to be exactly the time or whatever it may be, but they're going to get it. And, you know, I think that's part of the balance that you learned, you know, over that period of time, right?
And there's the politics too, back in play, you know? It's like, okay, and not only like, how do I get what we need here, but like, this is someone's career.
Yeah.
And, you know, I am very aware that I'm kind of pulling a lot of strings here, and there's emotions involved. And, you know, I want to be sensitive to what I'm doing here and make sure that I can come back. Because that's the other thing, you know, these things aren't just one-time jobs, you know, you have to keep going back and you need more stuff. And I really wanted the artists I work with to feel like we were a team.
Yeah. So
then I could go back, and if they weren't happy, you know, we could figure out, everything is solvable. It's how you communicate. Yeah. It's the honesty, you know, and sometimes that meant I was in their team completely, and I wasn't really in good favor at the label. Sometimes it meant I had to have hard conversations, but the only reason you can have hard conversations and get to a resolution is if you've already built that trust. Yeah. And I am really proud of that. I'm really proud of the relationships that I built and I had, and what we were able to do together.
Yeah, as you should be. And so what was the moment you're like, everyday dreamer?
You know, it kind of wasn't like a
you know, led up to it, but like, what was that? Because you left it, right? You did a transition out. You work with these big artists. You built this equity, right? And you realize you want to work the way you want to work, and you want to own something. So everyday dreamer comes from that. Yeah. What was that kind of like? I'm doing this.
It was out of necessity, because I realized that the label wasn't the place for me anymore, or that label wasn't the right place for me anymore. And I didn't want to stop doing my job. You know, I loved my job. Yeah. So the only way that I was going to be able to kind of continue is if I could do it myself. So it wasn't something that was like, I've got this grand plan to be a business owner. I had never thought about business. My mom always told me growing up, like, my mom's a self-made woman, entrepreneur, designer, never worked for anybody else. And she always used to tell me, like, drill it into my mind, like, don't work for yourself first. Learn everything you can and actually hold off. Like, don't do it. You know,
I would agree.
It's tough.
I would agree.
And I was always like, and my mom made it look so, I mean, I knew it wasn't easy, you know, but my mom is a warrior. Yeah. And so I used to think, like, okay, but like, I've got her in me. So like, we've got this. Yeah. But I listened to her. Yeah. And I didn't. And I never even thought about it. Yeah. So even at the time when it was like, everyday dreamer, it was more out of necessity than like, I now want to do this thing. It was like, okay, this place doesn't work for me anymore, but I want to keep doing my job. So how can I do this? Yeah. And the way that made sense was like, okay, well, I'll be a consultant, and then I can keep doing my job, and it would just go to the company instead. And so it was a very like last minute, like, okay, well, I guess this is what we're going to do. And here we are.
And here you are.
Yeah.
And so since then, you know, you've continued to work with some of the artists that you worked with before. And then you've evolved into this space where you're working with streamers like the IShowSpeeds of the world, Kai Cenats of the world. I saw you guys post something not too long ago where you're doing something with Aiden Ross as well. So, these are big names and really unique places. How do you find, I guess for those who are watching, because I feel like I know what you're going to say, but like this, finding, not so much finding the work, but how do you just kind of like work to evolve and adjust and be like, hey, I can do what you need. Even so probably you didn't know you could. You're like, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah, I really didn't. And actually working with the streamers began because I worked with a rapper for a long time, NBA YoungBoy. I think he was 13, signed at 13 when I started working with him.
Wow.
And I developed a very close relationship with him. We spent a lot of time together, like he was in a really interesting space in his life. He was a young kid. He had a lot of baggage. He had a lot of stuff going on. And I really felt for him, I had a real emotional connection, and we worked together for a really long time. And during that period, he was on house arrest for a while. And during house arrest, I was rolling out, we had an album. And, there's only so much shooting a music video in a backyard you can do before everyone's like, we've seen this backyard like multiple times. So I went to he had a big basketball court. So I went to the record label and I was like, look, give me some money. We'll turn the basketball court into a studio. We'll build sets so that we can shoot this album's worth of content, whether it's photography, music videos, whatever, interviews, like, there's a whole basketball court. Yeah. Like, let's do something with this because I'm running out of ideas here, in order to make this compelling and interesting. And he's getting bored too. Yeah. He doesn't want to just be in his backyard all the time or be in the house. So we did that. We built sets. It was incredible. Like, we shot a lot of content. I was flying back and forth to New Orleans like every week. And so
you'd actually build a set on the basketball court. Yeah. And you guys would shoot.
Yeah, we built full build-out flats, the whole, I brought in a production designer. And it was interesting at the time because a judge had to sign off on anyone going into the house. Jeez. So it wasn't just like normal
people
building
just couldn't pull up.
No.
Yeah.
So I had to, basically we had to vet everyone. I had to send paperwork. And like weirdly, for some reason, I ended up getting very involved in like the legal of it all. And I guess I was just proximity, but we used to have to send the judge the names, and they would have to look up at the people that were coming into the house. Wow. And I couldn't have more than X amount of people at the same time. So I had to stagger our production schedule where people were building in the morning, then those people would leave, then set decks would come. Do that, then they would switch out. So it was a very like weird Jenga.
Logistical. It's a complex.
It was logistical. And we're in the mid, like we're not, without giving the location of where he was, but like we're not close by anything.
Yeah, you're
like,
not in the city, next in everything.
We're far out. Yeah. So then sometimes people would just like wait in the truck outside the driveway for like 6 hours until they could come back in. It was absolutely bonkers. Yeah. But we created these sets, bedroom, a street scene, we created like a lot from that. And we kind of made miracles happen, honestly. The team I got were insanely talented. Yeah. And so from that, his manager actually, that was during that time period, a couple of years ago, called me and he was like, hey, you remember when you built that set in YoungBoy's basketball court? You think you could do that again for streamers? And at the time, I had just started the company. I wasn't working with as many artists as I was. Right. I was kind of trying to figure out what direction, I was going to take the company or like what I could do. I'm not someone that's ever done new business. Right. So even now it's something I struggle with and I'm struggling with. Like, okay, how do I, like who to talk to without sounding like I need something? Right. Like, because I worked in a company where people were coming to me. I never had to like go out there and
it's a whole world.
It's a whole world. It's something that is very real and present for me right now and is hard, So that wasn't something I was good at. And at the time when he called me, I was like, sure. That's usually my kind of take on something.
That's what you have to do. You need something?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, I got you.
I think I could figure that out.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, well, I work with this kid, Kai Cenat, and meanwhile, I've never played a video game.
Yeah, and you don't know who these people are at all.
No idea.
Yeah.
And even on the phone, Alex, the manager, was like saying all these names.
Yeah,
and I was like,
I love it when people deal with streamers. They're like, huh? And then you look at them like, oh,
and
wow,
I'm
they
like,
have tens of millions or
fuck?
100 million people following them.
And that's what like he was saying to me. And he was like, Shadeh, he was like, you have to know who this is. He's like, you work in entertainment. I was like, yeah, you're making me feel really old right now, but like I have no clue. And I didn't. Yeah. And he was like, well, he wants to start building out like his streams to make them more interactive, more creative. And I think I've now realized, and especially now that I'm doing a lot more creative direction for experiential and like what I love is making worlds come alive. Yeah. I love making 2D, 3D. Yeah. I love watching people enjoy something, immerse themselves. Like that's what I love. And that's why I love music videos so much, because the world came alive and you see an artist kind of change.
It's storytelling through this like immersion of space.
Sensory, you know, and my mom's an interior designer. I grew up with space and design and light. I just never knew that stuff was important to me. I had never explored that earlier on because I just got into working and I was like, here we go. So when Alex, you know, he asked me about this thing, I was like, yeah, I can definitely do that. And like a week later, maybe, not even that, I was building my first streaming set in Brooklyn in a brownstone, which was a horrible mistake because parking and the logistics of it. And you know, we just didn't have any time to find a house that people would let us, because I guess everyone apart from me knew who he was. And there had been like a riot or something recently that had happened. So like people were a little bit, you know, weary of like the streamers.
People like swatted him or whatever.
Yeah, and to be honest, like it's such bullshit. Like the way that, you know, media makes these kids kind of like, it's whatever. So I wasn't fazed by that. I was just like, okay, well, I'm sure there's another side to that story, but we'll move on.
Of course there is.
And so, yeah, we did the first house. It was Minecraft. And it was a not big budget at all. And we basically had to completely flip this man's house into the world of Minecraft. And I learned very quickly how differently things were, how I was doing things, and made loads of mistakes, I'm sure. Was very stressed out, but also like found this new way of bringing things to life that was like really cool. And not only really cool, but like these kids like loved it. Like, you know, Kai walks in, Speed walks in, and they're like, bro. And like,
that's so cool.
That's a nice feeling to watch all of your work. And for my team as well, like we did not sleep, you know, we did this job under crazy circumstances. Like I'm sure that entire team hates me. Like it was really intense, but it was the first time for me too. So I was navigating.
A lot of learning, a lot of,
the internet,
but you're building something that you're almost future-proofing your company, because when you're dealing with the talent, and that's kind of like a big, something I just have to stop you about, because once you're, similar to what your mom said, work for a company, like figure out the mistakes, get that stuff out of the way. And you start building your relationships, you're now legitimate, people trust you, you've been put in these positions, you're understanding the pressures, the pain, the struggle, the success, all that stuff. And so creating a new company, you would think, okay, just like most people say, you know, companies are successful like for 3 years, but you've already done the heavy lifting and you've carried relationships over, right? So it's like
that does backfire though.
It does backfire,
sometimes,
of course,
when you think like, oh, good, great, and then things shift.
Yeah, because like, also in the business, there's the good, as what I was highlighting. There's also the bad, that people will say something and then they'll do something else, or you know, you'll lose the business and you thought you had it, or whatever that may be. But the point that I was just making was, you did a lot of the learning, so when you are starting a company or you're moving in that space, you can quickly get that business and you have to deliver on it, which seems like you did.
Yeah, you have to move fast and figure it out, honestly. And that's the way I've always worked. It's how I need everyone that works with me or for me or around me, or like, that's very important to me. It's like, we're in the business of figuring shit out. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice something, or it's just like, I don't take I don't look at a problem, see a no, and it ends there. Like, that's just not how I operate. You know, if something is brought to me and I'm like, well, I can't quite figure that out, but like, maybe we can do this. I think there's always a way to work through things that is very important to me and everyone that I work with is being a problem solver and being willing to do that, not begrudgingly, being willing to be like, okay, what are we doing here? You know, not everyone has that in them, and that's also fine. But I love working with people like that when you can sit down and be like, look, guys, I know this isn't what we were expecting, but there are powers out of our control.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, what are we going to do here? You know, like, we're still going to make something. We still got to figure it out. So either we can be like, this isn't what we thought, or we can figure out how to flip this, make something amazing that we're all still proud of, or if we can't be proud of it, at least have a good time in the process. Enjoy it, you know, enjoy working together.
And that's part of building culture. And that's what you're doing right now with the company, which I think is an important thing that you should continue to cultivate as you are. I'm curious, like, what are some of the projects that are like have most excited you now in this process? Because how long have you had Everyday Dreamer?
This is our third year.
Third year.
Yeah. I think from when I first, so the first year I think I worked on, a good friend of mine, Miss Kehlani, we did a lot of the creative over her whole album rollout. It was Blue Water Road. I'm really proud of what we did.
Yeah. It looked beautiful. I saw, that was one of the first things I saw when it came to
it was a great project, but it was also a group of friends making art is what it felt like. You know, we hired an RV, we went on a road trip, we shot like a mini doc during the road trip for the album. You know, like, the artwork was 3 of us on the beach. You know, her manager is a really good friend of mine. And it just felt like such a fun labor of love. Like, I really look back on that time, and it was one of the funnest times in music, because we were just doing the things we wanted to do, and her vision was really strong and beautiful and like poetic, and I think emotional. We were all really moved by it, and it really connected like on a soul level. So I think, you know, spirit-wise that, and then the streaming stuff, Kai and Speed and the boys, like, for a different reason, I think that really excites me, because it showed me that you can always learn something new. You can always flip something. You can always, you know, flex a new muscle. And I think when you're coming out of a long, long career where you've been somewhere for a long time, sometimes you can feel, you know, like when you do hit that void of like, who am I? Sometimes, you know, you need just a little reminder of like, you can do cool things, and you can learn new stuff, and it's okay if you're learning on the job, like most people are.
We all are, really.
All the time, like now, and so I think the streaming stuff has also been really exciting, because it's a world I don't know much about too. So I've been learning. Like, I've been learning like what all the terminology is, like the different platforms for the Twitch, like, and so I think that's been really fun. But then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my film, because from, again, a heart perspective, being able to get into directing, you know, I've directed music videos, and being able to, I guess, really kind of realize myself as a creative and not as an executive behind creatives. And I think for a lot of people that, I hate using the blanket term like creative, but for a lot of creatives, it takes us a while to get the confidence to be creative. And a lot of people do kind of like the shadow work of being adjacent to creatives and making stuff happen, and really like wanting to do the stuff, you know, without knowing it. And it's funny, because I met a guy, I was going to go into business with a guy many years ago, and we got into like a back and forth of like how we were going to do it and all of these things. And I remember having a conversation where I was really heated and emotional, and like, and he said to me, he was like, oh, I get it. He was like, you're an artist. And I was like, I was annoyed by that, because I was like, what has that got to do with it? Like, what are you talking about? But
I could see that.
Yeah, and also I'm, fiery Middle Eastern woman.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, it's great.
And I think, what I've been really excited about through the studio is being able to explore that myself, being able to like step into that artistry and figure out my voice and like what I want to do with it. And that has led me to filmmaking and my documentary and being able to tell stories in a different way. I mean, all of this is storytelling. Yeah. And I think that at the heart of what I do, and I'll still produce and I'll still make other things come to life because it's part of the storytelling process. And that's what I love. Yeah. That's what I want to be close to. That's what I want to be doing. So I think being able to step into my own craft has also been something that is terrifying, but has been made possible through, having my own studio.
This level of storytelling for this doc, how do you think that came to you? How do you think that kind of like that muscle was built?
Honestly, my interest and love of people and understanding other people's realities and being curious. I am so curious. Like, either it was a godsend to my parents or because they knew that like it was never going to be a dull moment, but like I'm really curious. Yeah. Like I'm interested in how something works or who has done that or what, like the reasoning behind it. And I think you have to be curious to have that level of storytelling and the sensitivities that I developed with artists in terms of that relationship, I think has helped me. Yeah. In this space, documentary, which is very new to me. I've never, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing half of the time, but great, yeah. I know that I have a story that needs to be told that's worth telling. And I feel like I'm the right person to tell that because of my emotional connection, my history, my sensitivity, and the way I will handle this with the care and love that it, I think warrants.
Yeah, and I think, the part of you that I think will really ring true with this part of your storytelling is like this holistic approach you take to creativity, where you're really kind of developing the spiritual arm, the spiritual muscle, the spiritual part of who you are. We talked a little bit about reiki and some of the meditation work that you're doing. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and see how that's kind of like really evolved who you are, where you're going.
It's so funny because I don't lead with all of that stuff in most conversations because I think for a lot of people, they're like, what?
Yeah, some people think like, ooh.
Like, so woo-woo.
Frooey, witchcraft.
Like, okay, what do you do? But it really comes from, my dad's a healer. So he wasn't for a long time. My dad and my mom had a construction and design.
Your parents are both Iranian?
No, dad is English from Liverpool. Okay. Scouser.
Okay.
Mom's from Iran, born and raised. And they had a business together for most of my childhood growing up. And my dad used to do the cornicing, like the moldings in buildings. That was his part. My mom did the interiors. Got it. So that's what I grew up with.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Part of it. Okay.
No,
for another show.
No, they were great. They were a great team. But I think being married and also working together is probably quite tough.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so that's how I knew my dad was always in the construction side. And then at around 50, he was in his 50s, he had a calling and told us he was going to go and retrain as a healer, craniosacral healer. We were like, what? And so my dad became a craniosacral therapist. Wow. And he worked with energetics and healing. And he did a lot of work with babies that had birth trauma. Wow. And my dad is a very sensitive human. Like when we were younger, we used to go and hug trees. My dad is that person that's like, I think that tree is talking to us. Like, and I just thought it was normal. It was my dad, but I didn't realize the spirituality part. And, as you know as well, I think Middle Eastern culture, like from my mom's side, is steeped in spirituality. Definitely. And the tradition is not tradition without the spirit side. Right. And in everything we do, when I was growing up, I remember I was really sick as a kid in hospital with I can't remember what it was. I was ill though. And my grandfather, Baba, Iranian grandfather, came in and cracked an egg over my head to take the spirits away. It was good luck.
Yeah.
I didn't even bat an eyelid at any of this stuff. Yeah. Like we used to...
My mom, when I remember I sprained my ankle, she's like, yeah, just wrap it with dough.
Yeah.
Like, just put some dough and some flour and you'll be okay.
You'll be good.
Yeah,
it'll take it out. Yeah, but like, I didn't realize, because I grew up in such a Middle Eastern environment, that any of that was not something that other people would be doing. You know, like if there was ever
it was natural to you.
Yeah, it was normal. Like, again, if there was anything spiritually kind of amiss, like we would take this herb and you burn it over the fire and then you waft it over someone's head. And I just was used to that happening, you know, it was all normal. So the spirit part of my journey has always really been there. I just didn't know that that's what it was called. It was just my culture. It was normal. And then my dad became a healer and then he would practice on us, you know? So then I was like, what is this? This is insane. And like, he was really powerful, you know, like he died. I had a really severe liver problem and my dad diagnosed it before any doctors did from giving me a treatment. And I remember the first treatment he gave me, cranial work. When I came out of it, I was like, Dad, you were pulling on my neck. It was so painful. He was like, I didn't touch you. And in cranial sacral therapy, there's very little hands-on. So that was energy work. That was my body releasing itself. And I remember being like, and not that I've ever been a naysayer, like I've seen ghosts as a kid. Like I'm very, this is not the only place where people exist. Like I've always believed it. But that was the moment for me that I was like, whoa, like I need to understand what else is going on here. Like I need to understand what we can do for ourselves and what we can do for others and what the modalities are and how they can help our lives and, you know, and connect with the planet and nature and all that stuff. So it kind of began earlier, and then through stress, it was through stress of like being in the music industry and all the crazy, I started going on like small retreats, like started with yoga, and then it was like meditation. And I just started having some really like insane breakthroughs and moments that I was like, oh, I've stumbled upon something that is like precious and something that I really need to explore. And so it kind of just started that way. But, you know, the flip side of that is that when you start doing any energy work, anything kind of in that space, is you become very heightened and very sensitive to your surroundings,
so you're feeling it all.
To everything. And maybe again, because I'm kind of a let's dive in and figure it out later type of woman, I think I wasn't quite prepared for like how much it was going to affect me and how much I was suddenly going to be like taking stuff in and feel things. So that's also been part of the journey, is like not doing too much. And, you know, there is now as well this kind of, I guess, overhealing that I think people lean to, because the truth is we're a society that is like quite miserable. And so, you know, healing as that word is like, you know, whatever, but
we all need some healing.
Yeah, like it's so accessible to so many people now that, you know, I think even I was like, I'm going to go and do this thing and then do this thing and this training and da-da-da. And even I've had to slow down a little bit and be like,
and this relax. This is part of your commitment and intent to find a deeper meaning, to find calmness, to find what? And you're looking for?
Wael, what are you looking for?
You know, sometimes it gets messy.
Yeah, no, it's messy. You know, I think my family has had a lot of loss, You know, I've had siblings pass. My mum's lost many members of family. You know, my family was very, very close. We had a big family growing up, super close, cousins, uncles, like all of my grandparents had lived with me at some point. We'd all been in the house together, you know? And then a lot of people passed. In a small period of time, there was a lot of loss. And some of my good friends also passed away. Wow. And I think I have really struggled, and I still struggle with it now, is this concept that we're here doing all this stuff and working to all this stuff, and then one day we're just gone. Like, we're just not here anymore. And like, it's such a hard thing for me to wrap my mind around. And I think in a way I've become a little obsessed with, not in like a crazy way, but a little obsessed with like trying to understand it. And the truth is that I don't know that I will ever understand it. There's not logic that can be applied. But the deeper I go into like spiritual learnings and trying to understand, the bigger that question kind of becomes. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think I really am in it, but not necessarily to like understand why we die. I know that, you know, I'm not going to get to that answer, but to try and make some connections and make sense of things that happen. Yeah. And also have a way to cope with it too. You know, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not massively religious, although I was brought up in a Muslim household. Not hugely practicing, but still Muslim by birth. I get it. Yeah. And so I always was a little jealous of some of my friends that like were very religious, because I felt like, there's a pathway, there's something guiding. And for me, none of organized religion is just not my thing. I feel quite strongly about it, but I want something, you know, and I think spirituality and learning and being like in tune with nature as well, and understanding how things all support each other is helping me make sense of some of the things that happen or are happening, and make sense of myself, you know, like understand why I've done things the way I've done them, and give myself grace too, which I think is
very important.
Something that most people aren't very good at. And I know for sure I'm really hard on myself, but I think this quest of searching and like being a student is helping me practice a bit more grace with myself and with others, you know. And there's that saying of, what is it, like it starts with the love for yourself, and
can't love anyone else
until you love yourself. And like that is such a true philosophy to live by, and most people leave that to the last thing that they work on. And to be honest, if I was to do I don't believe in regrets at all. I don't think that they serve a purpose. I believe in like reminiscing and maybe, you know, taking stock of and evaluating, because I think we have to do that as humans in order to be better and do better.
Part of reflection.
Yeah, it's important, you know. We can't all just wander through this world, be like, well, it's just me. It doesn't work, you know. We have to, if something's gone wrong or you've done something, you have to take time to think about that. And I think looking back, one of the things I maybe would do differently is really dedicate time to learning myself, spending time with the hard questions, or reflecting on, I'm in the record label doing this stuff, like why am I responding like this, you know?
It would have been a different life.
It would have been a different life.
If you discovered it then.
If I had discovered, exactly. If I had spent as much time as I did on everything else, trying to understand who I was at my core, the big questions that I have of life, then I think, I mean, you know, I like who I am, I like my life, but I think I could have maybe avoided some of what's happened very recently, like this questioning of who, what, like why this need to kind of like get answers is not, we're not talking like 10 years ago. Like this is something I'm in now.
Well, I got something for you.
Oh God.
Yeah. Okay. But I'm going to read this because I pulled some.
Oh God, is it something I've said?
No, it's not something you said. We're going to get to She Made It because I want to talk about that after this. But you went somewhere that I feel like is important, because I think this journey that you're working on, right, is not just the journey that you're trying to seek, at least the way I perceive it, right? To find something like answers, like you said, it's not like you're going to figure out the meaning of what death is, right? It's like, it would be great for us to find that,
I would love to.
I think it would be great to find out. But, you know, there's a question that comes to me, and I thought that it would be a great one to ask you. Okay. And that is, what do you think you're searching for most? Oh. And I wrote this yesterday night. Is it peace or happiness? And the reason why I wanted to, there's a two between those. You guys got to really tap into this one. I'm going to share with you a couple of things. Thich Nhat Hanh is one of the Zen masters that I followed for quite some time. And he passed away a few years ago. And he wrote, many people think excitement is happiness, but when you are excited, you are not peaceful. True happiness is based on peace. So there is no duality in that world, right? And the Shaolin master, Shi Hang Yi, who's a Shaolin master in Europe. Brilliant guy. He's been on Diary of Podcasts and a bunch of, or Diary of a CEO, sorry, and a bunch of other shows. And he says, happiness comes and goes, but peace is something deeper. Peace becomes a foundation that allows you to move through every part of life with stability. When you're at peace within yourself, it no longer matters where you are or what you're doing. And there's another quote that I saw that I thought that was interesting, and it's peace isn't found by rejecting the darkness. It's found by accepting both the dark and the light. So the duality, at least in their perspective, is part of its existence. And when we learn to hold both without rejecting them, something shifts. So taking that into consideration, I'm curious with what you believe and what you're working on in these immediate moments of your life that you're seeking. What do you think you're searching for between the two?
Peace.
Yeah.
And I say that because I think happiness, it's a hard one because I am, by my nature, I think, a very joyful, happy person. Like, I love to laugh. Like, I love jokes. I love people making jokes at my expense. Like, I think when you laugh and when you're happy, something happens in your body and it makes you feel like I'm alive. Yeah. I think happiness really makes you feel aliveness. Yeah. But I also think that happiness can be so based on the moment, and it can shift. And what makes you happy in one moment maybe won't make you happy in another. And happiness is just a feeling. It's not a state of being. Peace is a state of being. Peace is something that you can be. Like, as a human, I can be at peace. I can be in peace. And I think that is what we should all strive for. Because if you're really at peace, the way that you interact in every part of your life with other beings, with animals, with humans, whatever it is going to be very different. And I think the way that we are in community with each other is very important. Community is a big thing for me. Yeah. And I think on this search, that has become very apparent to me, which is that feeling the feelings of belonging, I think, is something everyone should feel. Yeah. And peace plays a really big part of that, And I think my answer would have been different 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The older you get, your peace should be protected, but at all costs. Yeah. Like, your peace is your essence, it's your foundation, it's who you are. Yeah. Like, your home is important, the surroundings, because everything comes from your peace, your center of gravity. Your center of gravity is peace, in my opinion. It's being able to see something for what it is and understand that maybe that's not ideal, but not let it affect you, and it's our responsibility as humans to really take charge of how we're affected, because, we live in a world with billions of other people. And if you can't maintain your peace, then I think that has, an effect on everyone else. And that's a responsibility, how we carry ourselves and other people. And if you're not in a state of peace, it's a lot easier to, fall into bad habits, to feel that frantic, and nothing good comes from that place.
For sure. And I think you said something that stood out in your response, and thank you for taking the time to hear that and giving me your answer, was that community you're building. I think peace certainly gives you the ability to stand true in your foundation. And if you're going to be leading people, or if you're going to be working to build community, you need to be able to have that, so that community is built on solid ground. And so that community that you're currently building is She Made It. Let's talk about that. It's a nonprofit for underrepresented individuals. It's called She Made It. So it would be a really unique what I was gonna say was, it was interesting. It was very unique that Julie Pilot is the one that introduced us. Who was part of episode 2 on Messy Middle. Shout out to Julie Pilot.
Yeah, we love Julie.
She's the best, and she was like really high on telling me about She Made It. And so instead of me sharing, I would love for you to tell us about She Made It, and why did you see a need to create it, and what is your mission moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, Julie actually has been such a major part of She Made It from the very beginning. We actually hosted our first She Made It event at FYI with Julie, with Will's blessing, and they've been like really big supporters. So She Made It, actually the idea began when I was still at the record label, and it came from my observation of who I was able to get to come and tell the stories we were telling. And it was frustrating to me that the filmmakers behind the camera were not representative of the artists and society in general. And I didn't understand, well, I mean, I understood, because I understand racism and sexism and, all the big issues that are ever present. But I just thought, but I know these filmmakers exist, and She Made It was created to serve underrepresented filmmakers. And I knew that they were there because I was working with them.
Right.
And it was just it was really hard for them to break through and to get into the spaces that they were being offered all these big gigs and big jobs. And what I was seeing was that it was really a matter of access and information. And I felt like in our industry, in my department, which was a creative department, I was like, there's something we can do here in this part, we can change the landscape here. And all that we need to do is share knowledge. And so I created a curriculum. And it basically, the touch points are the issues that I knew existed from speaking to creatives and also watching it and witnessing it. So I built, I guess.
It's like a 3-day.
Yeah, it's a 3-day. It didn't start like that. It actually started as, okay, we'll do like a seminar. It will be like a day or a couple of hours. We'll touch on the business of creative. We'll touch on the actual creative process. We'll touch on the key tenets that I think are very valuable in a filmmaker's career. And a lot of it is business focused, is industry focused. But then there's craft, and I didn't go to film school. As we know. And I think sometimes you feel like you're playing catch up a lot when you don't have some of that language and the tools and just the insider, knowledge. Yet there are so many of us in this industry running around with information in our brains that could be vital to someone's career. And we just think it's just something Right. And then what for me really kind of was a light bulb was like, this is not just something we know. Like what I think is a super simple, concept is not, unless you've been around it, and even my career, I only knew what my job was when I became a commissioner because I had been around it. I was an intern and I was the assistant and whatever. So I learned about the fact that this thing exists. If I had been outside of that building, I would never have known what a video commissioner was. Why would I?
Right.
And so this idea of access was really playing in my mind. Okay, well, let's get this information out there. Let's make this process easier in a very safe space. So my original idea was to just do a 1-day, thing. And then as we kind of started building it, I realized there was a lot to cover. There's a lot going into it.
Yeah.
So then it developed and it became 3 days. And the first one we did was in 2023, just as I had left the record label. My initial plan was to do it within the record label, and it didn't work out. But it was my program, so I took it with me. It was actually going to be called Free Game. That was the original name. And then like there's a guy on Instagram that has it, so
right.
moved on.
Switched it up.
Yeah,
she made it cool.
And so the first one, 2023, I honestly had no idea what it was going to be. For me, it was a space that I needed as well. I had just left my home.
Yeah.
I needed community as well.
Right.
And I knew that this information that was held in the minds of all my friends and industry peers was going to be valuable to people that need to be telling these stories.
That they sometimes take for granted.
That is taken for granted. And so, yeah, we went into it. And actually, Julie, my friend, is funny because my friend, Anna, who's now actually on the board of She Made It, she said, oh, you should meet my friend Julie. She's working in this really cool space. It's FYI. It's, will.i.am's company. And then she put us on email and I was like, Julie Pilot. I was like, we know each other.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
And there's only one Julie Pilot. She and I were both mentors at a organization in Los Angeles called Youth Mentoring Connection.
Right.
And actually that was when I moved to America, I found Youth Mentoring Connection and I became a mentor very early on, like year one of moving to LA.
Wow.
And I loved it. They became my family.
That's cool.
They're a wonderful, an incredible organization. Again, it was a place that I needed as much as I was helping and working with the kids. I had just left my home and family and I was in Los Angeles.
By yourself.
By myself, working in this job that I didn't really think I belonged in. And so I started being a mentor and it was the most transformative thing I could have done. And so Julie and I were both mentors at Youth Mentoring. Wow. So when they put us on email, I replied and I was like, Julie, it's got to be you, right? And she was like, oh my God.
Right.
And so Julie and Will offered to host our first workshop. And so She Made It. It kind of went through a couple of different iterations, but the final format for the workshop is 3 days, split between panels and active workshops and also networking. And when we put it up, I threw it up on Instagram being like, there'll be some filmmakers in my network that this is going to be helpful for.
Yeah.
And we had 150 applications.
Wow.
And I was really just didn't quite know what to do with this because I thought it was going to be 20 people. And I was getting a lot, DMs, emails, da-da-da-da-da. And, in true Shadeh fashion, I was like, well, here we go. There's a need for this, which I knew existed.
Right.
But, when you start something like this, you don't really know how it's going to be received. And all that did is solidify this is important work.
Yeah, you got to get it in.
People need this.
It's impactful.
And we're going to figure out how to make it happen. So Julie gave us the FYI space to do the first workshop. And honestly, that changed my life. That changed my trajectory. Wow. It changed my purpose. It changed so many things. It gave me a lot of sense in terms of the things I had been through before. Mm-hmm. It made it make sense because I talk very honestly.
If not for those things.
Right, exactly. I moderate the panels.
Yeah.
I have a personal relationship to all of the attendees that come. We're very open and it's a community where I encourage people to speak and ask questions. And, this isn't school. And so I'm very honest about all things industry and, my experience, people's experience. I ask honest questions on the panels. And it has been the most transformative thing I've ever done. I think it's a massive undertaking, and now I'm running a 501c3 and it's a huge job for sure. And I'm figuring out kinks every day and, I'm trying to upgrade and I'm learning, but the point of it is something that I'm very proud of what we have built. And I'm so proud of the community that we serve. Some people have gone on to, they've created short films, they've been signed to agencies, wow. Nice. There is results that come from this.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was going to ask. Seeing that, have you been able to see and kind of get that feedback loop and kind of
absolutely.
That moment,
100%. Yeah. And everyone gets to see it actually. All the panelists that come, because the way it's set up is there's panels where we talk about specific things.
Yeah.
But I'm a person that I learn on the job. And I feel like a lot of people are like that. And so we also have active workshops where I set a task at the beginning of the 3 days. It gets unlocked when everyone sits in the room, like this is what we're going to be working on. And amongst the 3 days, there's hours set aside where people work on their ideas. And there's producers in the room that they can go and ask questions to. Because when you're building and you're an emerging filmmaker, how often do you have access to a producer that can tell you like, let's think about that. Like logistically, will that work? And that's very important, you know, especially now with like how much content there is and, you know, the scope of how you can kind of break into the industry. It's important that you're aware of the things you're saying you can do.
Yeah.
You know, if you're presenting something.
If you can't do it.
Yeah. And, you know, not that you have to be a producer as a director, but I think having an awareness is really important.
Definitely.
Now, you know, I think back in the day there was maybe a little bit more separation, but now I think you do need to be aware of that, and having these moments of workshopping is amazing. You know, I've seen some ideas in a first iteration and then seen them on the last day, and they are completely different.
Wow. Yeah.
And really all that is a room with some dedicated people for 3 days, an inviting atmosphere, no judgment.
Supporting.
Like supportive, like that's all that is. And the third day is actually a kind of a wild day because we do speed dating. And the reason being that I hate networking, always have. I'm very weird in situations where like I feel like I'm asking for something. That's probably why like the business side has been tricky for me. But I was like, okay, well, how do we get the information that we need here in a way that makes everyone feel like there's an even playing field? And I was like, well, everyone's awkward in speed dating. Like, surely that's like the weirdest thing you can do.
Turn up the awkwardness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what we do. I invite, like there's 30 attendees. That's kind of our max limit at the moment. So we have 30 attendees and 30 executives. And we literally kit the room out like speed dating, and everyone gets like 3 minutes with each person in front of them. And then there's a foghorn that goes off and they have to switch and go to the next. And there's a few reasons for the awkwardness. I did it because that's funny. But it's also like, you know, sometimes in our careers, you have very small windows of time with very important people.
Yeah.
You need to know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
You need to know what you're trying to say, why you're trying to say it, you know, and how to connect on that, how to land your point really well. And so it's amazing because everyone starts off like, some people don't speak for 3 minutes, and it's like so wonderful watching everyone be weird. And the execs and the established creatives also being like, I don't really know. And then by the end, it is like doom, doom, doom. People sit down with their notepads, they take a phone number straight away, the email address. Like, you know, it is clear that this is a skill. All it is a skill that you need to practice. You need to find what your sweet spot is, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's an amazing thing to watch. It's like a fan fave every single time. And we did the first one in LA, with FYI and Julie. And we quickly that year, I sprung into like, this is the best thing. This is what I want to be doing. And we went straight to New York and did another one, which like in hindsight, probably could have waited a moment before we had done that.
You did it. It's all good.
And we did it. Yeah. You know, I have a wonderful producer, Autumn, and her husband, Loris, who have been like instrumental in helping this come to light. Yeah. They actually now work with one of the directors that came through She Made It. They produce all of her stuff, and she's killing it. Like, she is a huge success story.
That's amazing.
And a lot of people have actually, you know, like met during the process. I've hired assistants that were through She Made It. I've had PAs come, you know. I want to get these people paid. I want work to be on the table. I don't want this to just be something where you get some information and you leave. You know, I've been to those panels and they serve a purpose, but this is about leveling the playing field. This is about access. This is about inclusion. You know, this is about making sure that the future of filmmaking is representative. It's just, it's fair, you know. And we're hearing from the people that deserve to tell these stories. You know, we're getting the perspective. That's how we are going to get better in this world, you know, and it starts with the access. And you know, also in this work, it also starts with the care of that too, of like, we're all here together supporting each other. You don't get that often in life or in business.
Right.
You don't get that, like, don't worry, you've got this, you know? And like watching people kind of pair up and like get in their pods and support each other. You know, there's WhatsApp groups that still are active 3 years later from the first one. People hit each other up, they work together. So we did 2 that year. Then I got a wonderful partnership through friends with Billboard. So Billboard has been like a huge, huge partner. They gave us an incredible location in 2024 in Manhattan. So we did it again and we like leveled up the production value, you know. And we're preparing now to do the next one in LA this year with some really wonderful new sponsors.
Awesome.
And I just want us to keep growing, and I'm expanding She Made It as well because, you know, it's so great what comes out of these 3 days. I wish more people could experience it. I think if we expand the attendance to any more than 30, it starts to lose the soul a little bit.
Right.
So I'm expanding the programming to kind of be more all round the year. So whether that's, you know, online conversations or panels in coffee shops, fireside chats. I think my mission is to try and get this to as many filmmakers that need it.
Yeah.
And also extend it a little bit to execs and creatives already working in the industry, because I think we need it too. You know, there are spaces.
Give a support system of people.
And all of these systems feed into each other, you know, it's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you know, so many jobs, when you talk about men and women and, you know, the workplace, there's so much business in the male sphere that happens in, you know, the boys club, the golf
golf course,
the this, the that. And like, we don't really have versions of that, you know? And I feel like I want to create an ecosystem that
where that can
be cultivated, because like, you know how powerful we can be, and you know how much incredible creative, you know, product will be made and stories will be told if we understand like who's in our network, and we can engage in a way that feels natural, you know, and feels gentle and loving. And I mean, you can also be a bad bitch and be good at your job, but you can, you know, you can feel like safe in a area of doing it. So that's kind of what I want to do. I want us to get paid, and I want to encourage new generations of filmmakers to understand, you know, the worth and their value and their ideas, and feel like they can stand 10 toes down when they go into rooms with people that maybe they wouldn't traditionally feel like they could do that with. You know, I think that's something that I'm proud of, that we help a little bit, is that confidence, you know, and that security.
Yeah, I love that. I think you know, community, creative, finding your identity, dealing with the challenges that corporate America, or corporate world internationally tells you to do, and then navigating kind of, why did this not work and how did this not work? You know, it's been awesome to cover all of these elements with you today. I do appreciate you coming and kind of unpacking. You know,
of course.
It's been really nice. I always finish, you know, the interviews that I have with one final question.
Oh God, it's not going to be hard, is it? You've thrown me some like big existential ones.
Sometimes we got to get there, you know. But yeah, it's been nice to hear it, because you know, I always discover something, you know, with people when they do it, and I think there's like a connective tissue that everyone has kind of provided that is very connected. Doesn't have to be similar, but it lives in that world. And so the question is, what question are we not asking ourselves enough? Or what question are we just not asking ourselves at all, as a community, as a people?
Wow. I have so many answers for this.
You got one?
Okay. You drive a hard bargain. What question are we not asking ourselves? God damn it. Why am I doing this? And I think, and I actually can't take credit for this because this is something.
Take credit for it,
no, I can't, because it definitely comes from Michelle Obama.
Okay.
And I would never try and plagiarize. But your why is that is the center. That is the question, the driving force behind all your decisions. And I think we don't give ourselves enough time to discover that and to maybe make a mistake in it. But why am I doing this? Why do I want this? Why am I pursuing this? I think the why of it all is a gateway to leading you to the things that are going to be what you're really searching for. Like if you get really clear on the why, then I think you have a far better chance of getting to whichever destination you want to get to. And sometimes that takes a long time.
Yeah.
It takes time to really figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you can just answer on the spot in 1 year. I think that's a lifelong maybe mission, but it's something that should always be here in your mind behind decisions. Is like why. That curiosity, I think, is really crucial.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Here in Brooklyn.
I love the podcast. I love the messy.
Thank you. Yeah, we're getting messy. We're going to continue to do this.
We're all messy all the time.
Yes. Shadeh Smith, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And that's a wrap.